The Temple of Harmony stood like a peaceful refuge in the middle of the city's noise. At the entrance, a sign displayed the name of Christina Fry, a psychic who offered emotional healing and guidance through clairvoyance. For many people, the place represented a final hope, somewhere to find answers when life had become too confusing. That calm is suddenly shattered when a woman rushes out of the temple. It's Rosemary Tennant. Her expression is tense, her movements nervous. Behind her comes Christina, visibly upset, trying to stop her. She insists Rosemary cannot leave, that she's in danger, that her late husband has tried to warn her through a message from beyond. But Rosemary refuses to listen anymore. She rejects every attempt to help her and walks away with determined steps, leaving the temple and everything it represents behind. Suddenly, without warning, a car violently accelerates. The vehicle swerves off the road, climbs onto the sidewalk, and slams into Rosemary with brutal force. The impact is devastating. The car never stops. It speeds away, leaving Rosemary's lifeless body lying on the pavement. Hours later, the scene is sealed off. Police keep back the growing crowd while flashing lights from patrol cars flood the street. The CBI team arrives and meets with the detective in charge, Marco Francis, who explains the details of the case. The victim is Rosemary Tennant, widow of an influential businessman with powerful political connections. There are witnesses to the hit and run, paint traces from the vehicle involved, and part of the license plate. After a brief argument over jurisdiction, it's decided the CBI will take over the investigation. Francis also mentions that Rosemary recently reported her son Travis missing, a troubled teenager with a history of difficult behavior, adding another layer to the case. While the team studies the information, Christina Fry approaches them. She explains that Rosemary had been in a session with her when the spirit of her late husband appeared, warning that something terrible was about to happen. Christina claims she was only acting as a messenger and tried to protect her. Patrick Jane, who has been silently observing, makes no effort to hide his contempt. His expression shows deep distrust toward Christina and everything she represents. Lisbon notices the tension and calmly asks Christina to come to the office later for additional questions. Christina insists Patrick is misunderstanding the situation, while he smiles with clear satisfaction, convinced he'll eventually expose her. The next day, Jane, Lisbon, and Van Pelt question Christina at the CBI offices. She explains she had known Rosemary for 3 years and saw her very often. After her husband's death, Rosemary felt lost and vulnerable. According to Christina, many people took advantage of that weakness, damaging her relationship with her children, Travis and Clara. When they try to go deeper into the subject, Christina refuses to continue, claiming professional confidentiality. Patrick questions her motives after mentioning the enormous amount of money she received every week. Christina responds by analyzing Patrick with unsettling accuracy, but he dismisses her observations and makes it clear he doesn't believe in her abilities. In the end, Christina asks to leave. Later that same day, Jane, Lisbon, and Rigsby head to Rosemary's house. There they meet Jeremy Hale, a photographer who has been living in the residence for the past 6 months. He insists he never had a romantic relationship with Rosemary. Patrick asks permission to freely look around the house. While Lisbon and Rigsby ask about Rosemary's children and the will, Patrick explores the property. From upstairs, he calls them to come up. They discover a fully equipped photography studio installed in what used to be a bedroom. Jane suggests Jeremy may have caused the conflict between Rosemary and Travis, implying the boy left because his room had been turned into the studio. Later, Patrick discovers a tiny attic room that appears to have become Travis's new bedroom, reinforcing the family tension. As Jane keeps pressing with his observations, Jeremy grows more nervous and defensive. Back at the CBI offices, the team gathers to review everything they've uncovered so far. The family tensions are beginning to paint a complicated picture. There are unresolved resentments, financial interests, and several people who depended on Rosemary in one way or another. Patrick points out that beyond the family circle, there are also people who benefited from her emotional vulnerability. At that moment, Clara Tennant, Rosemary's daughter, arrives. She looks exhausted, shaken, her face marked by grief. She expresses sorrow over her mother's death and deep concern about her brother Travis's disappearance. Clara explains that after their father died, Rosemary changed drastically, becoming distant and far easier to influence. While Clara was away studying, Travis told her that several people were taking advantage of their mother, something that deeply upset him and made his behavior increasingly erratic. Clara also mentions that Jeremy moved into the house around the same time Travis started having problems. She describes Jeremy as intimidating, someone who made people uneasy. She has no idea where her brother is and fears he may be in danger. Patrick asks her to dial Travis's number on her phone. She warns him he probably won't answer, but agrees. Patrick leaves a strange message, seemingly meaningless, yet carefully crafted to reach the mind of a confused teenager. Sometime later, Jane, Rigsby, and Cho wait inside an amusement park. The atmosphere is loud and colorful, filled with children's music and laughter that sharply contrast with the seriousness of the case. Little by little, the purpose behind Patrick's message becomes clear. Travis appears among the crowd. Cho can't hide his surprise at how effective Jane's method was. Travis sits down on a carousel. At that moment, the three agents carefully approach him, surrounding him without drawing attention. The instant Travis notices them, he tries to run, but Patrick calmly talks him down. The teenager stops and finally agrees to stay. Back at the CBI, Lisbon and Cho question Travis. He insists he loved his mother and strongly denies having anything to do with her death. He explains he ran away because he hated Jeremy and couldn't stand living under the same roof with him. They ask him to explain where he was and who he was with in order to confirm his alibi for the night of the murder. Meanwhile, Patrick watches from outside the interrogation room beside Clara. His attention isn't focused only on Travis, but also on every gesture and every reaction from the young woman. Later, the team gathers again to discuss a crucial new discovery: changes made to Rosemary's will. They learn Jeremy was set to inherit a large amount of money, and Christina had also been added as a beneficiary only days before Rosemary's death. The possible motives begin multiplying. Van Pelt defends Christina and questions Patrick's constant distrust of her. Right then, Christina calls the office claiming she's sensing something important. She says she has experienced a vision connected to the case. Van Pelt decides to visit her, and Patrick insists on coming along. Jane and Van Pelt return to the Temple of Harmony. Patrick studies the place carefully, mentally noting every detail that reinforces his impression that the temple functions more like a business than a spiritual sanctuary. Christina welcomes them, and they sit down to talk. Patrick questions the contradiction between her supposedly profound abilities and the almost theatrical decorations surrounding the temple. Christina defends herself by comparing her methods to Patrick's own past, claiming they both know how to give people what they expect. The tension between them is obvious until Van Pelt redirects the conversation back to the case. Christina then reveals her vision. She sees the car used in the murder submerged beneath a large body of water. Shortly afterward, police discover Rosemary's vehicle sunk in a reservoir outside the city, strengthening the disturbing accuracy of Christina's revelation. Soon after, Clara and Travis report that Jeremy has fled the house carrying several of Rosemary's jewelry pieces. Patrick returns to the residence and examines Jeremy's photography studio more carefully. There, he finds a damaged photograph of a young woman. The damage appears to have been caused by the heel of a woman's shoe, leading Patrick to conclude Rosemary stepped on it in anger. The photograph is shown to the children, who identify the young woman as Connie Adams, the daughter of Rosemary's bridge partner. When Jeremy is found in a compromising situation with Connie, he's immediately brought to CBI headquarters for questioning. Jeremy repeatedly denies murdering Rosemary, even as the evidence against him begins to pile up. He lies about knowing Christina and eventually asks for a lawyer. The team speaks with Christina again and discovers that not only was she named in Rosemary's will, but she was also involved in a relationship with Jeremy. Patrick, increasingly convinced he's close to the truth, returns once more to the Tennant house. There, he asks Travis and Clara to invite Christina to perform a séance during the reading of the will in order to summon their mother's spirit. Although Patrick admits he suspects Christina, it becomes obvious he's preparing something far more elaborate, a carefully constructed trap. The night of the seance finally arrives, and the tenant house fills with people. In the main living room, relatives, acquaintances, and everyone with some direct or indirect connection to Rosemary gather together. Among those present are Travis, Clara, Jeremy, the family lawyer, Christina, and the CBI team. The atmosphere is tense, heavy with expectation and nerves. The lights dim, and Christina begins guiding the session, asking everyone to focus and have faith. Patrick watches quietly from a distance, paying close attention to every movement and every reaction. To him, nothing happening in that room is accidental. As the seance continues, the lights begin flickering and an unsettling feeling takes over the house. Then a voice is heard, accusing Clara of being responsible. The effect is immediate. Clara panics and runs out of the room. Patrick wastes no time and follows her. Away from everyone else, Clara finally breaks down. Unable to handle the pressure any longer, she confesses. In that moment, the truth behind the supernatural effects is revealed. Cho and Rigsby were inside a nearby van, creating the sounds and signal interference that made the illusion possible. Patrick had planned every detail carefully. From a distance, Travis watches as his sister is arrested. His expression is filled with disbelief, pain, and betrayal. Back at the CBI offices, Clara explains what drove her to kill her mother. She says she was furious with Rosemary for cutting Travis out of the inheritance and for ignoring every attempt to speak with her. On the night of the murder, Clara followed her mother to one of Christina's sessions. Later, while Rosemary was walking down the street, Clara tried calling her one last time, hoping for a final chance to talk. Rosemary never answered. In that instant, blinded by anger, Clara ran her over with the car. Clara insists she did it for Travis, convinced their mother had failed as a parent and that parents are supposed to protect their children. Her confession leaves a heavy silence in the room. Patrick listens without interrupting, visibly affected by those words, though he says nothing. Before being taken into custody, Clara says goodbye to her brother and offers him a few final pieces of advice, trying one last time to fulfill her role as the older sister. Later, when the case appears to be over, Christina walks into the CBI offices and asks to speak privately with Patrick. The two of them enter an empty interrogation room. Christina asks him to let her speak without interruption. Then she tells him she has made contact with his late wife. She delivers a deeply personal message, assuring him that his daughter died in her sleep, without pain or fear, and that she never suffered. Patrick says nothing. He remains completely still and silent. Christina quietly leaves the room, leaving him alone. Minutes later, Patrick finally breaks. Tears begin running down his face in a silent, restrained cry, revealing the emotional weight he has carried for so long. Van Pelt walks past the hallway and glances into the room. Seeing Patrick there, she says nothing. She simply steps closer and gently closes the door, giving him the privacy he needs. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't stop here. Check out the other Mentalist episodes on the channel and watch the full playlist in order to follow Patrick Jane's best cases from beginning to end.